Russia has placed orbital anti-satellite systems on combat alert, capable of disabling the most expensive and sophisticated American spy satellites and eliminating America's superiority in surveillance and communications. Is this really the case? Why are the Americans alarmed? What systems does Russia have today? And how did space become a battlefield? We'll talk about this and about the new hero of the week after a brief summary of positive news. Subtitles. In Nizhny Novgorod, another hydrofoil vessel of the Valdai 45R project was launched. In the Leningrad region, an electric vessel of the Moskva 2.0 project. At the Onega plant, a dredged material transport vessel has been laid down. In the Leningrad region, a Project 16609 tugboat. In Moscow, a production line for 3D printers for metal printing was opened. In the Nizhny Novgorod region, a complex for the production of thermoplastic films. In the Sverdlovsk region, a building materials plant. In Tatarstan, 2 facilities for the production of materials for utility networks were opened. Russian school children won 4 gold medals at the 2nd International Biology Olympiad in Uzbekistan. Russia has placed an orbital weapon on combat alert capable of disabling American government satellites. This was stated by the head of U.S. Space Command, General Stephen Whiting. In mid-April, he also said that Russia, despite sanctions, remains a strong space power and may be planning to deploy a nuclear anti-satellite weapon in orbit. And although Russian officials have repeatedly denied such accusations, they have been voiced more and more frequently lately. Let's analyze them based on the available facts. The idea of anti-satellite weapons emerged even before the first artificial Earth satellite entered orbit in 1957. And already in 1960 in the USSR, in response to the American spy satellite program Corona, the formation of an anti-satellite and anti-space defense system began, which was called IES Satellite Interceptor. We created the world's first devices that could maneuver in orbit, approach a target, and fire a cloud of steel balls at it. However, despite all the difficulties in relations with the U.S., it was never used for its intended purpose, although it was tested on our own target satellites. However, even without being used, the IES system worked as a deterrent and forced the Americans to act more cautiously. Unfortunately, in 1991, amid political detente and disarmament, we officially halted the program on our own initiative, then decommissioned the satellites and archived all the documentation. It seemed that something irreversible had happened, but now the Americans believe that it was only a temporary setback. Continue. Although the Soviet IES program was shut down, Russia did not abandon the idea of anti-satellite weapons itself. And today, the ways to destroy spacecraft in orbit have become much more diverse. It is known that high-altitude interceptor fighters, MiG-31, are capable of carrying contact system missiles on board and using them to destroy satellites in low orbits. The S-500 Prometei anti-aircraft missile system is also capable of shooting down space targets, whether they are ballistic missiles, space rockets, or satellites. There is official information, although without details, about laser weapons, for example, such as the Zadira complex. There are electronic warfare systems that do not destroy the satellite, but disable its electronics and blind it. All these are well-known facts, and these types of weapons are deployed on the ground or on board aircraft. But space weapons similar to the Soviet IES are indeed shrouded in the deepest secrecy. General Whiting really does have plenty of reasons to be concerned. Even from our news reports, you may have noticed that Russian military forces regularly launch rockets with unnamed satellites from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome, and their purpose can only be guessed at. Sometimes secret satellites are disguised as secondary payloads during non-secret launches, and as Western observers have determined, we have learned to hide one or more satellites inside another. And Western observers have dubbed such craft Matryoshka. It is precisely these, judging by Whiting's statements, that Russia has put into service after several years of testing. We're talking about the Nivelir system, those very same inspector satellites you've probably already heard about. Like their Soviet predecessors, they can move independently in orbit, approach other satellites for inspection, and, according to foreign sources, have the capability to destroy them by firing at them. Russia has been conducting relevant experiments since 2013, and our satellites have often performed unexpected maneuvers in orbit, leaving observers puzzled. But truly, the Americans became concerned when, in May 2025, we launched a new satellite into orbit that perfectly matched the trajectory of the American spy satellite, NRO 338 Keyhole, which belongs to the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office. It is believed that this particular satellite provides the highest resolution imagery of any spy satellite in orbit, and is America's most valuable asset. So the Russian satellite was launched with exquisite precision into the same orbit as Keyhole, and now it is following it, not getting too close but also not moving to other orbits. The same applies to 3 other Russian satellites, which have also started tailing American spy satellites. In 2021, of the Russian spacecraft unexpectedly launched a mysterious projectile at a speed sufficient to cause damage, surprising observers. Later on, other Russian satellites demonstrated the ability to open up and release hidden objects of unknown purpose from inside them. Some do this almost immediately after reaching orbit, while others do it nearly 3 years after launch. From all this, the Americans concluded that the Russians had created a system of dormant killer satellites, ready to destroy the most important spacecraft on command. This very system has been adopted and is being prepared for further deployment. There is certainly a certain logic to this. Russia cannot and will not be able to keep up with the United States in terms of the number of surveillance satellites. Therefore, in the event of a major war, it must be able to disable at least the most significant enemy spy satellites. This capability is not provided by some kind of superweapon, but by a set of tools, whether missiles, satellites, or electronic warfare systems, that complement and back each other up. By the way, the Americans also have anti-satellite missiles, and China is actively testing its maneuverable spacecraft in space. Thus, despite mutual assurances of peaceful intentions, all sides are preparing for future battles in orbit. The Americans' nervousness, for the most part, is not due to our nesting doll satellites, but to the possibility of creating space-based nuclear weapons. In their opinion, such an indiscriminate weapon of mass destruction could quickly make orbit uninhabitable and wipe out all the advantages the U.S. and other countries have in surveillance and communications. Yes, Russia would also lose all its satellites, but the point is that by 2040, the total number of satellites in space is expected to increase more than 5-fold, from 12,000 to 60,000. And no precision strike weapons would be enough to eliminate that mass. So in the event of a major war, Russia would have to act asymmetrically. Of course, all of this is just hypothetical speculation. Russia has repeatedly rejected the accusations, but back in 2008, we proposed to the Americans that we codify principles against placing nuclear weapons in orbit, but they arrogantly rejected them at the time. After that, the active phase of developing the Nivelir system began, and apparently some other ways of equalizing capabilities as a last resort. We hope that it never comes to that, but we will keep you informed about any developments.